Good afternoon. It is April 25th, approximately 1:15. I'm coming to you from the Great Olympic Peninsula out here just south of La Push. I want to share a story with you guys. It has nothing to do with poop, but it is pretty funny. It's about as real as it gets. So growing up out here, I grew up on one of the rivers out here in Western Washington, and this river was literally in my backyard. You know, you could sit at the dinner table, look and see the river. When you were on the back porch, you could literally throw rocks into the river. Anyways, the story goes, a friend of mine and myself were hanging out. I believe it was, I don't know if it was some kind of break in school, if it was the weekend. I can't remember, because this was back, I think we were in middle school, like 8th grade. We might have been freshmen, I'm not too sure. But anyways, we decided, I said, hey, do you want to take my dad's lake boat down the river? We could throw some fishing poles in there and do some fishing. And he was all for it, And this time of year, it was January. So the rivers out here in Western Washington in January are absolutely raging. They are really high. They can change on the drop of a hat. And at this moment in time, when we were sitting on the back porch and we were looking at the river, the color looked good, and we didn't have cars or trucks at the time. I don't even think we had driver's license at the time. And so we ended up calling his dad and asked his dad to come out and give us a ride up to where we wanted to put the lake boat into the river and float down to my dad's house. So his dad ended up coming out and picked us up. We loaded the lake boat into the back of his dad's truck. We threw in a couple fishing poles, a tackle box. I ended up putting on hip boots, and we took off. His dad ended up driving us to a spot where we wanted to put in and float down. And we had to hike in. We had to pack this lake boat down this gravel road through a gravel pit, and then up and over the embankment, and then down to the river. And on the way down there, we ended up finding a blue plastic hard hat like you would wear in a mill. And my buddy Brian ended up grabbing it, and he threw it in the boat, and we got ourselves down to the river. Once we got down to the river, it changed from where we were at downriver to where we had gotten to. It was chocolate brown. It looked like Willy Wonka in the chocolate factory, brown. And we had a choice, either to float or pack that boat back up out of there. And we definitely weren't going to pack the boat out of there. We were, risk takers. We did a lot of crazy stuff. So this right here was right up our alley. We put the lake boat into the river. And lake boats are made for the lakes. They are definitely not made for the rivers around here in Western Washington. They're flat bottom. This one only had like 2-foot sides on it. And as we got in there, Brian was bigger than me. He's always kind of been bigger than me, but he was in the front of the boat, and I was in the back of the boat. And we had 2 oars. He had one in the front, and I had one in the back. And we had taken off, and it was fun at first. We were having a good time going down through some little rapids here and there, and we got to a real critical point on the float. There was a spot in the river where it would split, and if you went left, it goes to a waterfall, and you want to stay right. That way you don't go through that waterfall, And it was a good thing that I knew that waterfall was there, so I knew that we needed to hang right. And as we hung right, as it straightened back out, it got into some really bad rapids. And this is where it went south really quick. We started hitting the rapids, and my buddy actually grabbed that hard hat and threw the hard hat on his head as we started going down through there. And we were hooping and hollering, and it was every time we would hit a wake and come back down, water would come into the boat. And about the time that we got out of those rapids and it kind of flattened out, the boat was completely underwater. Like, If somebody would have been standing on the bank and would have looked out there and seen us, it would have just looked like two guys floating down the river. This is no joke. Like the fishing poles and the tackle box were like floating along with us, and we didn't know what to do. I ended up bailing. Like I just jumped out of the boat. And when I did that, I jumped out of the boat and I started doggy paddling towards shore, and I turned, and that's when I seen the boat pick up after I had jumped out of it, and flipped up over on top of Brian, and he disappeared underneath the boat, and I could barely see the bottom of the boat going down the river. And in this general hole, it was probably 15-20 feet deep. It was probably more like 20-25 feet deep, and I was just doggy paddling for my life. I had those hip boots on, and they were snapped up, so they were getting full of water. Good thing I was I would say a power swimmer, because I should have drowned. I should have went under with the weight of those hip boots attached to my pants. But I powered through it, and as I got closer to the bank, I had turned around, and then that's when Brian had submerged back from underneath the boat, and he was gasping for air, and I finally had made it to the bank, and he ended up making it to the bank, and we were both hooping and hollering and just couldn't believe that we had made it to the bank, because I remember thinking that I was going to drown along with Brian. So we sat there, we watched the fishing poles, the tackle box, the boat go down the river, and I remember telling Brian, I said, hey, we need to follow that boat down the river. So we ended up going down the bank, down the river, and watched the boat end up going to the next set of rapids, and it got hung up on a great big rock. And Brian and I, a lot of the times growing up, if we didn't want to do something, we played paper, rock, scissors to see whoever won, didn't have to do it. The person that lost would have to go out and do it. Well, at this moment in time, it was, there's the boat. Who's going to go get it, And we played paper, rock, scissors. I won. So Brian had to go upstream, jump back into the river, and this was hilarious, So he goes up river, jumps in, and he's floating down the river, and I'm watching him. I'm just dying laughing, and he hits it just right, goes right into where the boat was at, and the boat was up against the rocks, so the bottom of it was facing the current. Well, he ends up hitting it, and he's holding on to it, and he's sitting there, and he's rocking it, and finally he gets the boat to come free. It spins around, and then he's riding it down the rapids, and there he goes, and he's hooping and hollering. I'm running down the bank laughing, and he ends up hitting another rock, and when he hits the rock, it spins the boat and spins him, and he goes off of it, and down the rapids he goes, and then the boat's still sitting up against the rock, and he goes down the river, and it's just amazing that he didn't drown, or hit his head and get knocked out. He ends up making it through the rapids, makes it back to the bank, hikes back up to where I'm at. I'm sitting there scratching my head like, oh no, like what are we gonna do, And he makes it back to me, and well, it was round 2 of paper, rock, scissors, So we played paper, rock, scissors, and I end up winning. So here goes Brian, goes back up the bank, jumps back in the river, and goes down through that set of rapids again. And I'm sitting there literally pissing my pants laughing so dang hard. And he ends up hitting it again, hits it just right, gets a hold of the boat. Well, this time the bottom of the boat was facing the rock, so the sides, and the current was hitting it, and it was like trying to lift a grand piano, with the sides of the boat. There was just so much force, and Brian is a strong guy, and he could not get that boat to break free from that rock, He sat out there and he struggled for quite a while, and I finally told him, I said, dude, just come back, we got to figure out a different game plan. So he ends up letting go of the boat, and he floated down the set of rapids and then come back up to the bank, and he came back up to where I was at, and I told him, I said, hey, we need to go get help. So we ended up hiking out of the river, up through the woods, through the forest to the highway, and then walked the highway down. And a guy that we knew that was in high school at the time, that was, he might have been just out of high school. Anyways, he seen us walking down the road, slammed on his brakes, did a U-turn, came back, picked us up, asked us what we were doing. We explained ourselves to him, and he was just laughing, you know, like, oh my gosh, I can't believe that you guys are doing that. Anyways, make a long story short, because I'm already 10 minutes into this, we ended up going back down to my neighborhood, picked up, or went and got one of my friends, a neighborhood kid that I had grown up with, and told him what we had going on, and asked for his help. And he said, absolutely, I'll come help you guys. So after we had gotten dropped off, the person that picked us up had to go back to town, so we ended up hiking the highway all the way back, dropped back down into where the boat was at. And when we got down there, you know, I decided to get a great big log, or a great big stick, you know, about the size of a small dinner plate. It was about 15 feet long, and we all three of us went up, jumped into the river, holding onto that log, and then floated down. And then I can't remember who it was, got a hold of the boat, and then we all, you know, got our footing and our position, and stuck that log down inside the back of the boat, and we all three got on there and just started prying on it until we actually had moved it off of that rock. And then we all three got a hold of the boat and rode it down through the set of rapids. Luckily did not get it hung up again, and we got it to shore, got all the water out of it. And it was nice to have that third person there, because we had to pack it up an embankment that was straight up. Brian and I probably could have did it by ourselves, but it would have been, you know, it would have killed a normal guy. So it was nice having that third person there. We ended up getting it up to the highway, left it there, walked all the way back down to my neighborhood, or back down to my house where I had grown up. And before we had left, I had written a note and explained to my dad, you know, what we were doing. Well, my dad was home when we had gotten there, and when my dad had seen this note, he was pissed. He knew the stretch of river that we were floating, where we were putting in, and he knew about the rapids, the waterfall, because he did a little bit of fish guide. He floated the rivers in drift boats here. So he knew what we were up against that time of year, and he knew that we were going to sink the boat, and then he figured one of us were going to drown, if not both of us. So when we had gotten back to the house there, you know, Dad was pretty upset. He was more happy that neither one of us had got hurt, and that we made it back with our lives, you know. And he ended up selling that boat not long after that, because he knew that I would probably attempt to do it again, which I probably would have. So the boat didn't hang around there much longer, and Dad ended up selling it. You know, I just look at, that was an absolute crazy experience. You know, if you go back to some of the videos that I've shared with a lot of near-death experiences, you know, that was another one. You know, at one point I thought I was going to drown with the hip boots on, when they filled up with water, but thank God I was strong enough to power swim through it, you know. And I just always tell myself, when I look back at a lot of life-threatening encounters that I've almost lost my life, you know, it just makes me remember that God has a plan for me. He always has, because I should have been dead a long time ago, you know. It's just a blessing I'm not. It's a blessing that I'm in recovery, and I'm just embracing it for what it is, and being able to talk and share stories like this to whoever's watching these videos. You know, it helps me, you know, and I hope it's entertaining for you guys. Like I said, I have a lot of stories. I mean, there's not much that I have not done, you know, out here in Western Washington, you know, from, I mean, you name it, I've done it, or have experienced it in one way or another, you know. So anywho, I'm gonna sit here and enjoy this beautiful view. It don't get no better than this. I got to go down and open the doors tonight for evening hope meeting. You know, share my experience, strength, and hope, and not only that, but hear a message from somebody else from the meetings. You know, Papa's going to Nia Bay for the meeting over there, so I'm gonna stay back there's a handful of them going over there. So I'm going to stay back and open the doors for people that can't make it to that meeting in Nia Bay, which, you know, I would like to go over there, but I don't mind staying back and opening the doors for people that can't make it, you know, because recovery, I need to get it one way or another, and staying back and opening the doors for people that can't make it over there is awesome for me, or to me, you know. Recovery is something that is a part of my life, and it's going to be a part of my life for the rest of my life. So with that said, last night was an awesome sunset. I posted some pictures on my Instagram. I'm going to put some more on there here later this evening. It ain't going to be much of one tonight because it's overcast here today. It's still nice, but it's just not blue skies and the sun's not shining. But I'm going to hang out here and enjoy this beauty of God's green earth down here at the beach, just south of La Push. So always remember this: do what makes you happy. Don't worry about what other people think or say about you, because at the end they don't matter. You matter. With that, I'm out. Y'all take care and God bless. Wait.